Okay, so when I bought this drill, there was no videos on YouTube or anything on how to run one of these things, and I didn't have a manual, so I figured some other people have got the same problem I did, so I figured I'd make a video on how to run one of these things. I'm putting a more in-depth video up in the spring of pulling around the yard and everything with how it actually runs, but the basic mechanics is right up here are your meters, and that measures out how much seed you're putting down. That moves your the whole bar in and out. That's got the meters on it, so that measures how much grain falls into these cups and goes down into the openers and into the ground. When I bought this, that was seized up on both sides. This whole piece that travels along down here. So I'm assuming other people have got the same issues, and the way I did it is that tube, the whole thing is square down there underneath, you can see that. But what I did is I soaked up the inside with PB Blaster, WD-40, and penetrating oil in here, and I just gently worked it back and forth, and I got it freed up, and I just kept working it until it was. But make sure that's not frozen up before trying to run it on the ground, because you'll shear it right off, and you have to weld it back together, and it ain't gonna work. But and then you got mine's got the lift clutches that I got rigged up to a handle up there. Would recommend, that's a pretty good system of doing it. Would recommend doing that, because you can still trip individual ones if you have to, or just trip both of them at once. It's pretty handy. And this one here was froze up. I took this apart. It wasn't froze up, it would trip down and wouldn't trip back up. You could manually trip it up, but it wouldn't lift it. But these toggle arms in here go into the roller in here, and the spring was so jammed up with old grease that it wouldn't pull it back up, so it just wouldn't reset to trip back up. And it's pretty easy to take this apart. You just take these bolts off, take the bolts off the bottom, and then I just popped it right, and these should just slide right apart. There's not much to really hold them together. It should just slide right apart once you get these off. It's far off. And I got this. You gotta take this out of here too, and then you should be able to clean it up and put it back together. It should work. I have to do the other side too, the spring. So I'll have a video on that. This here is your depth / down pressure. I can't remember which way is which, but I have it all the way down, so I don't really remember. I think this is all the way up, as far as it'll go up. These here are your down pressure springs for your individual things. So I got the ones that go behind the wheels set tighter. So you just move these cotter pins up. There's holes that go all the way up here, and that just makes the spring tighter. So when you drop it down the ground, it presses hard into the ground. And another thing you have to make sure, depending on what you're planting, is if it's in high or low gear. They say oats. I'll put the manual picture, but they say oats. Some oats should be in low if you're trying to plant it lower, but mine was in high, so I didn't have to change it around. So I don't really remember how to change it around. The manual does say. But if you're planting oats or soybeans, you should be good. I haven't used the grass box, so I don't really know how that all works. But I have, all my discs were frozen up in here, and they wouldn't turn, all the openers. And I got a spare one I can show it better on, but these are all frozen up in here. And you have to take these caps. These caps will screw off. A lot of times they're seized on, so you have to. I had to heat all mine up and break them loose. But there's a cotter pin and a spring and a washer in there. Then there's the cast iron bearing in there. And that's bad. You don't want any play in here. That's also about what these are here. You move them down to keep these tight. But once them bearings get worn out, then they're kind of just worn out and you can't find parts anymore for them. So you have to make sure you keep them pretty good grease, but even that sometimes doesn't always keep it from wearing out. But they usually have oil caps up here that screw into the back, but I didn't want to worry about my ports getting plugged up down here at the bottom. Those are the tube that runs down from the top. So I put grease things so I can clean them all out and blow them all out at the end of the year, and put new grease in every time I use it, and be able to have like some pressure back force when I put them in there. I will say these scrapers on here help a lot, so if you can get your hands on some of them, it helps a lot. And also the drag chains too. A lot of mine are missing, but the one side that does have new ones on there works good. And then that's pretty much all. And take the openers off. One thing I'd recommend doing, taking these down pressure tubes off first, and make sure you're gentle with these because these will bend really easy. You want to pull this cotter pin out, and then and then it'll just drop down to the ground. And then you want to take this nut off and get the bolt out of here, and you can just slide it right out. But when you're putting it back on, because this is just steel that's bent down, that's held together with these, so it helps if you have a second person to either hold this open while you slide that on. It's kind of hard to do it with one person. That's what I learned. I had to do them all by myself. And then these big springs, them are they help your lift arms lift that all up. I think that's what it does, or that's like your overall depth pressure. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but pretty sure that's what that is. Because I loosened them up, and it was way harder to lift these by hand. When I tightened them up, it was way easier to lift them up. Could be doing stuff totally wrong, but I think that's what that's for. I had the chains to the grass boxes, but my toggles down here, throw out bearings, it's broken off, so it doesn't shut off, it just keeps running. So I just took the chains off, and I don't plan on seeding any alfalfa or anything with it anyways. So also another thing I'd recommend getting it, if it has been used recently, I'd recommend, there's a chain I think on both sides in this cover on here. I'd recommend taking all your reels off and taking that cover off, cleaning all that chain up and re-greasing everything. But one thing I will say, make sure everything's greased pretty well. That's about all I got. I'll have thrown a clip of the manual and going through the manual, but that's about everything I can show you right now without running it. I'll have a more detailed video in the spring.